Hey pals, how is it going? Today's video is a long-awaited part 2 to a video I released earlier this year. Is competitive really as bad as people say it is? The first video went over the most mentioned complaints people had with the in-game competitive mode and discussed whether they were still applicable 2.5 years after its initial release with the Meet Your Match update. In today's video, I want to go over those complaints once more and where possible come up with a possible solution. I would also like to share my thoughts regarding in-game competitive and provide you with a few tips if you're eager to meet your match. The first complaint mentioned in part 1 was the long queue times you had to go through in order to get a filled up server. During my testing, it took me 9 minutes to get into a server, only to see those matches being abandoned 3 out of the 7 times. A waste of 27 minutes of queuing. Another thing that was very apparent is the long warm-up times at the start of every game. In my testing, these warm-ups took an average of nearly 5 minutes, which was longer than half of the actual game's playtime. Cutting down on warm-up time can be as easy as implementing the system that CSGO utilizes. Instead of starting a 150-second timer as soon as somebody readies up, start an automatic countdown of 60 seconds as soon as all the players connect. It is simple and will cut down on the time that is lost to warm up by not relying on players to ready up themselves. Even though there's no direct solution to the long queue times other than getting more people to play the game mode, there is a way to stimulate players into queuing up for this mode by incentivizing it. At the moment there are no rewards to playing and ranking up other than a competitive badge that is displayed on the main menu. A great way to reward players for playing would be to have a slight chance on an item drop after every game. The same way that CSGO rewards their players for playing the game. To actually make them worth it, I believe an exclusive Warpaints case to be the best solution. One which contains official or community made paints that only drop as a reward in competitive. This way, given that the Warpaints are of high quality, there is a reason to play for them, and if not interested in the Warpaints themselves, they can be sold to the highest bidder. I'm sure that this will in fact drive more players to try out the game mode, but there's one thing that needs to be combined with these rewards to keep them playing, and that is something called seasons. I'm not referring to seasons as in battle passes or season passes for which you have to pay. I'm talking about seasons as in leaderboards and timed rewards that change every so often. This way people have an incentive to keep coming back as long as the rewards, in this case Warpaints, are worth it. With the workshop filled to the brim with high quality Warpaints forged by the community, this should not be a problem at all. People want to compete with others to see who is best, and leaderboards are a great way of implementing that in video games. An even better incentive to keep coming back is to tie rewards to those leaderboards through the idea of tiers. The higher up in the leaderboard, the better your reward will be. If done correctly, this should draw a lot more people to try out the competitive mode, and once they're hooked, keep them playing. As part of these seasons could be competitive contracts. The same type of campaign that Valve introduced for casual can be used as groundwork for a competitive campaign. During this campaign, people can play towards contracts such as getting a number of wins or getting a certain amount of kills as a class or with a weapon. This system that we have in casual can introduce people to new strategies and ways of playing the game as they explore something completely different to their usual loadout or playstyle. As reward for completing these contracts, a store similar to the Jungle Inferno campaign store could be used where people can redeem their wins for a competitive exclusive reward. Every couple of months, a new season lands with new warpaints, a reset of the seasonal leaderboards, and a new competitive campaign. Something that should not be as much work on its own other than figuring out the new objectives for those contracts and going through the community workshop to build high quality community warpaints to be used in the game. This will incentivize people to click the queue button, but in order to keep them hooked, there are a few things that need to be changed. There are a few more problems with the game mode that need to be fixed to make sure that the rewards are worth the flaws. For some odd reason, Valve thought it would be great to unify the looks of competitive TF2 to the outside world when being watched by an outsider. This means that certain graphical settings related to view models, and default config files are enforced when playing competitive. Valve needs to at least let players decide upon their own view model settings to make it more user friendly. This should also allow you to use your own configuration again after playing a competitive match, instead of having to restart the entire game to make that work. That is just plain annoying to deal with. There are a few other minor things that need to be changed, such as the ability to turn off chat whenever a player spams one of the offensive words, as the medic is not healing him 24/7, and the fact that when somebody abandons the game during the warm-up, the game is cancelled instead of looking for a replacing player. There are certainly a lot more issues with the mode that needs to be fixed, but these seem to be the biggest for now. Another change that will become possible and should be made is to allow people to filter for maps for which they queue, or at the very least, game modes. The competitive map pool consists out of 14 maps across 4 different game modes and includes maps such as Turbine, maps that should simply not be part of competitive. The only reason I can think of why this has not been implemented yet is because of the lack of players. If this would be an option at this very moment, Valve would fragment the small player base that competitive mode has. This is not as much of a problem for casual as a lot more people play casual, but as you can probably guess, it is for competitive. The only way we will probably be able to filter by map would be to get more people to play the game mode. A wonderful solution would be to let players vote on which maps to remove by looking at the least played maps across this mode. This way, Valve can rotate out the maps that are not played and experiment with other maps. I mean, let us be honest here, I'm sure that I'm not the only one that is frustrated when he finally gets into a competitive game after queuing for 10 to 15 minutes to get into a Turbine server and also see that everybody connects. I wish that would be the case for every process server. So, with these changes, people can vote with their playtime. A very sensitive topic within the competitive community is the topic of class restrictions and the weapon restrictions. Before we can discuss these sensitivities, I believe it to be important to understand Valve's intentions with the game. Team Fortress 2 is a casual game. It was never meant as a competitive game. The in-game competitive mode tried to at least provide a somewhat competitive experience, but it has all of these major flaws to be really competitive. Any other game with a competitive mode is meant to be competitive, and therefore balancing is done with a competitive perspective. So, the competitive mode that we have at the moment is more of a casual competitive mode than truly competitive. The balancing is off and teams are free to stack the heavy class, something that would not be possible in any other competitive mode. To make the in-game competitive mode actual competitive, the weapons need to be balanced or restricted and class restrictions need to be put in place. The question is though, do we really want it to be true competitive? The people that are looking for a true competitive experience have been playing third-party competitive leagues such as TF2 or UGC, or have been playing competitive lobbies on TF2 Sender. If you expect in-game competitive to be casually competitive instead of hardcore and sweaty experience, you'll be greeted with a surprise of how much fun and close the matches can actually be. Instead of trying out funky tactics, people are focused on the objective and try to attack as a team. If players were to accept the fact that in-game competitive will never truly be competitive, there are only a few flaws that need to be addressed to make it loads of fun and an entirely different experience than casual can offer. If you want to be really competitive and show off your skills you have acquired after playing for thousands of hours, third-party competitive is always an option. There's one thing that truly ruins this objective focused and attack as a team experience, and that is the number of players that have no real prior experience with the game trying out competitive. At the moment I believe it to be too easy for people to queue up for a game without them actually knowing what they're about to jump into. I've stumbled upon players that look free to play and are free to play that installed the game a few hours prior to their first competitive game, something that should simply be impossible. Even though it might not be a true competitive experience, this does not mean it should be open to every other player. I'm not vouching for a closed off game mode, I'm vouching for one more restriction to accessing the game mode, and that is some sort of minimum hour requirement or any other way to check whether or not the player has at least some experience with how the game is supposed to be played. Frankly, I'm not waiting for a competitive game during which I have to explain that the pyro can air blast or that the medic can ubercharge, which should simply be known by players in advance. Now that we've gone over a few possible solutions for some major flaws that have been brought up by the community, I'd like to share my own opinion on the mode and provide you with some tips that can improve your experience. Whenever I queue for competitive, I realize I will not be getting the ultimate competitive experience and instead will have to deal with people that are not as good as you might want them to be. You might be playing on maps that are not considered competitive at all, and you might not even be able to play the game as someone might not connect. However, it's about setting these expectations that ruin the potential fun that could happen. You expect something that is simply never going to happen. Instead, go in without any expectations and just let it happen. Sure, you have some disappointments to add to your already very long list of disappointments in your life, but that does not mean all of it has to be bad. Out of every 5 games I queue up for, 1 is abandoned because one player fails to connect and 1 is against a stacked team. But the other 3 are close games that literally have you sitting at the edge of your seat, biting your tongue, since a small mistake can cost the team their win. The true competitive feeling of fighting to secure the win is still present and will make you think, that was a good game, once you either won or lost. The feeling is more than enough for me to suffer the other 2 games. Is it for you? A major advantage for me is that games do not take 30 minutes by default, but take as long as they need to be. I believe this system of winning 2 rounds to secure an overall win a great way to keep the game short enough to not turn still, and long enough to still feel like a game instead of a short round. One might say that the queue times are not worth it, but I'll advise you to queue up while you're also queuing up for casual. This way, you're able to play the game you love playing and not have to stare at the main menu for 15 minutes at a time. A major improvement, right? One last tip I can provide to the people that gave it a try but found it a huge letdown: queue up with a friend or 2. You don't have to use voice chat, all you have to do is play together. This way, it will be easier for you to let go experiences that were not as good as you hoped them to be, but also share your happiness when they do end up the way you want them to be. I would like to end this video with the following words. In-game competitive is great if you want to get into competitive or if you want to play a few serious games. It will not meet your expectations if you are a veteran competitive player looking to have a consistent close call firefight. And with these last words, I thank you for watching the video. I really do appreciate that. If you would like to support me, leave a like and a comment and subscribe to the channel. I can also be found on Twitch, Discord and Twitter, of which I will leave links to the description down below. Have a great day and I'll see you next time.